Tonight on Idaho News 6, it is all about gardening. Our anchors out in the field to explore the many ways gardening connects and enriches our Treasure Valley community. I'll be introducing you to some of the people sharing their knowledge with people of every age and skill level.
I'll take you inside a local nursery to explore options for a thriving garden that supports our natural ecosystem, from local seeds to waste diverting compost and even supporting pollinators. Don?
Bees are so important to the environment. Coming up, we're going to introduce you to a beekeeper who's going to stand in the middle of how many bees?
35,000.
35,000.
And it seems to be the topic on everybody's mind, drought. I talk with local water experts about how to water effectively so that your garden can thrive while reducing costs and waste.
This is Idaho News 6 with Karen Lair, Don Nelson, and Roland Veris.
Thanks for joining Idaho News 6 for a special segment focused on all things gardening. It is a topic I love, and tonight we're going to look back at some of the resources we've shared over the last year, as well as some new ones you might not know about. It all has a focus on local people, local plants, and our local ecosystem. So you want a garden, but you don't know where to start? Just ask a local master gardener.
It's just starting now because it's starting to warm up, and so people are out working in their yards and their gardens. That's when you get the calls.
Jan Veach has been solving plant-related problems in the Treasure Valley for more than 3 decades.
I think it was 86 when I started.
Jan is an advanced master gardener, part of a nationwide program run locally by the U of I Extension in Ada County.
We're trying to just get everybody growing and enjoying plants out there.
Whether it's questions about trellises, trees, houseplants, or hedges, master gardeners undergo hours of in-class and hands-on training to help.
We teach them everything from flowers to frogs, and teach them about funguses and fertilizers. You name it, we're going into that subject.
It was like being a sponge, you just have to try to absorb all this stuff.
The advanced master gardeners like Jan tend to take on a specialty, teaching others in the program topics like proper pruning, prepping soil, or perennial planting.
I tend to teach classes on like tool sharpening, one of those unheard of.
That's important.
Lectures. Yeah. Oh yeah. People, when they go and they buy a shovel, they don't understand that it's not sharpened, and they're wondering why it's wearing them out digging a hole.
Plus, with transplants moving to the Treasure Valley from all over the U.S., master gardeners are fielding countless questions from new Idahoans still acclimating to the climate.
They buy a house and they don't know what the plants are.
So we're getting a lot of people moving into the area who haven't lived in a high desert before. And learning how to water their plants correctly is a real biggie.
They need to learn the best way to grow plants in this area.
Community involvement is also huge for the volunteer program, maintaining community gardens, pruning park landscapes, and teaching kids classes.
We work with a lot of the hospitals, the libraries. We help with their landscapes.
And although it's a passion for plants that brings these gardeners together, it's their love of people, keeping them involved year after year.
It's just a really positive, it is like a family.
There's wonderful people out there in gardening, and they share plants, they share produce, they share their ideas, they share recipes. And so they're really wonderful people to work with.
Well, if you're interested in applying to the program, or you have a general garden question, we do have more on how to contact those master gardeners in this story on our website, idahonews6.com. Plus, their spring plant sale is coming up this Saturday at the U of I Extension office near the Greenbelt in Garden City. Gardening is for everyone, and for some, that passion starts early. The Boise Urban Garden School, or BUGS, is a way that the city of Boise is giving young children hands-on education about the origin of healthy, natural food.
I like greens.
There's nothing better than watching a child pull a carrot stem out of the garden and realize that that carrot was underneath the dirt.
Kids get out of the classroom and into the sun. The Learning Garden at Combo Park spans 3/4 of an acre and produces 1,600 pounds of fresh food each year.
We have a commercial kitchen on site where we take a lot of the produce from out in the garden and take it inside and teach kids how to cook nutritiously with food from the garden.
It also serves city programs like full-time preschool, after-school programs, and culinary classes for the entire family. Well, if you don't have space for your own garden, you're in luck. Good food brings the community together, and that's true here in Meridian, where a network of neighbors share their gardening knowledge with one another and their produce with those in need. Every summer, the volunteers at the Meridian Community Co-op Garden harvest hundreds of pounds of produce to share with local food banks. The city of Meridian provides land, water, and equipment for the roughly 1-acre garden near Kleiner Park, but it's the hard work of 32 local families that make yields like this one from last summer happen.
What a harvest today. It's absolutely amazing. Help yourself, and then we're loading into Sue's truck.
Each family chips in at the start of the season and dedicates a few hours of hard work each week, weeding, pruning, and picking. And then come harvest time, those volunteers get first pick and the rest is donated. Through the challenges of the pandemic in recent years, neighbors say this community resource became more than just a way to eat healthy and give back.
This was a mental health sanctuary, I think, not only for our gardeners, but for people walking by. It was a place to go. It was a date on the calendar for us when our calendars were clear.
And though most families started out as strangers, they're now an organically grown, tight-knit community. Right now, the garden does have a wait list, but you can follow their progress every week on Facebook. The Meridian Community Co-op Garden is just one of many community gardening opportunities in the Treasure Valley. You can find a map to more on the Treasure Valley Community Garden Co-op website. Just head to tvcgcoop.org. Maybe gardening just isn't really for you. Well, the Treasure Valley gardening scene has something for you too. Global Gardens connects local refugee farmers with shoppers looking for fresh produce. During the pandemic, the group debuted a community-supported agriculture, or CSA, program. Members pay a fee in advance and then receive a weekly share of a farmer's crops for about 4 months. Sign-ups for this year's program are already underway. You can learn more about box options and pickups at globalgardensboise.com.
Coming up, how the North End Organic Nursery is offering more than just the plants to help your garden grow and how you can plant with the purpose. Next. Every garden starts with a seed, and thanks to the Snake River Seed Cooperative, it's never been easier to find hardy native varieties. 2 area women started the project almost a decade ago to preserve and promote locally adapted seeds that naturally thrive in our climate. It's now blossomed into a full-fledged collective of family farmers that spans the Intermountain West.
They're out in the field, they're looking for off types and characteristics in the plants that are not desirable. They pull those plants out, so every year our seed gets better and better adapted to our region.
You can find their full line of seeds at the stores on your screen, but many more retailers carry at least some of their seed offerings. Preserving and sharing seeds is a gardening tradition. It happens every spring at the Eagle Library Seed Exchange, now wrapped for the year, and it continues in Boise's North End, where a local woman has created her own little free seed library. It's a no-cost resource for anyone in the neighborhood to take some seeds or share with others.
I was hoping by creating this sort of library that it could help others who want to get interested in gardening or do their own gardening have less of a barrier to obtaining seeds.
You can find the North End Little Seed Library on North 10th Street between Alturas and Sherman. The North End Organic Nursery is a treasure trove for gardeners with everything from the variety of plants to even natural pest control. Take a look into how they're providing sustainable solutions to help your garden thrive.
So you just stick the plug in the ground. So again, a much smaller package, but you'll have fruiting blackberries off of this by next year.
Lindsay Schramm is the owner of the North End Organic Nursery. While people normally come through her doors for plant starts, she says there are benefits of shopping seeds.
It gives you the ability to control what you want, when you want it. It's also a little bit more inexpensive to be able to start your own seeds versus buying them in a plant.
Having a thriving garden is more than just healthy plants and soil, but also having the right creepy crawlies. Lindsay says that your garden needs to be a vegetarian-free zone when it comes to the insects.
And some might argue that all insects are beneficial to some degree, but the ones that we specifically bring in have a purpose of eating insects that will then eat our plants.
The nursery also carries those insects that you may need for your garden
inside of these containers, and they are egg sacs that have not yet hatched. So you're looking at these cool little cocoons that have about 200 to 300 little baby praying mantis in them. amazing creatures. And what you want to do is find a place that's kind of in your garden beds, 1 to 2 feet off the ground, and just give them a little place to kind of hang out. And they will, when they hatch, they will just kind of get out and start getting busy on whatever they can find.
And it's not just the praying mantis that helps keeps things from nibbling on your plants.
Things like ladybugs are fantastic for going after the most common known pests of the aphid, versus we also have beneficial nematodes that'll parasitize grubs in the soil that help prevent insects from emerging and then eating your plants.
If you want to get into gardening but don't want to dig up your yard, there are options.
You can throw down a fabric bag and fill it up with a bagged potting soil, plant your stuff all on the same day versus putting a lot of planning and investment into it.
And lastly, planting for the environment by having a multi-purpose garden.
One of the purposes can be aesthetic beauty, but having another purpose of it being edible, like something blueberries, blackberries, strawberries, veggies, something that's going to feed pollinators, something that's going to create shade for another type of habitat. There's multiple ways to look at your landscaping, and I always like to make sure that a plant has at least 3 purposes in my yard.
If you're looking for rich material to build your soil and nourish your plants, you don't have to look far. The City of Boise's popular compost program has diverted more than 100,000 pounds of yard and food waste from the Boise landfill over the last 5 years, turning it into a sustainable option for local green thumbs. The city has compost pickup locations at the Botanical Garden and on Joplin Road. Residents can pick up 2 cubic yards per year for free.
Coming up, the best ways to avoid waste while watering your lawn and garden.
This is Idaho News 6.
Gardening is not easy. It takes hands in the dirt labor, careful consideration of climatic conditions, and my least favorite, weeding. I went to a gardening site to learn more about what you can plant right now. There's really nothing like this time of year. Bees are buzzing, birds are chirping, and plants are starting to grow.
I think that if you put anything out there that's tender, like a tomato plant, you have to protect it.
Springtime in southern Idaho sometimes feels like a little bit of a roller coaster when we have rain one day and then really warm temperatures the next. And it's at this time that our gardens are most sensitive to weather conditions.
And so that's why they call it spring. I think it just springs this way and springs that way.
Lots of factors impact when and where a plant can grow. An important one is minimum winter temperatures, broken down geographically through hardiness zones that determine which plants can survive outside.
And so plants that can fit into our hardiness zones, we'd be looking at growing things that are somewhere between a 6 and a 7.
Generally, any species in zones 2 through 7 can live outside and survive South Idaho winters. But anything above zone 8 needs the help of an observant gardener and a good growing season without frost.
We usually have about 150 to 160 growing days here.
In 2016, the Boise area saw the longest growing season on record at 232 days, a positive thing for growers attempting sweet potatoes, a crop that takes over 200 days to thrive.
Do you plant or don't you?
Right now, planting cool season crops like garlic is fine, and underground crops like carrots are also a safe bet. But it's still too early for plants that need a ton of sun like beans, corn, or tomatoes. So with fluctuating conditions, gardeners are watching the weather closely.
Oh, they watch it all the time, and so they become, I guess, weather hawks.
Well, speaking of growing season, we've actually seen a trend of increased amount of days over the past 5 decades.
Yeah, we certainly have up to 50 days. You can see that median line, but not all seasons are exactly the same, though.
That's completely true. And in 2016, that was that year that it was a very long season with 232 days.
Yeah, and if you look at this, you go back to 2010, that's about a 3-month difference. So there's a huge variability from year to year, though.
Well, speaking of variability, what do we have in store for this year,
Yeah,
Scott?
that's the big question. We starting out on the cool side. Take a look at this forecast here. Been updated now for the month of May, and as you've expected, it's already been cooler than normal and wetter than normal. Cooler than normal conditions are going to be continuing here across the northwest. And as far as precipitation goes, wetter than normal up to the north, drier than normal to our south, but average for Boise is 1.39. We've already had half of that moisture in just the past 3 days, and so most of that falling in about a day and a half. So here's the key to watch, though, over the next 10 days. If you're planning on planting this weekend, look how chilly it's going to be. This is what I'm concerned about right here. Look at these low temperatures, 36, 33, 36, and 38. You might want to wait 1 week.
The drought in Idaho is getting some help from spring rainfall, but every homeowner can do their part to make that extra water last a lot longer. Our Roland Barras shows us how.
There are lots of ways to conserve water. This might be among the more extreme. No grass whatsoever. I love it because I don't have to mow. But you might say, what about the trees, Roland? And you would be right, they do need water. But with drip irrigation, they require a fraction of the amount of water it takes to water your lawn.
If anyone knows the water challenges we face for a good-looking yard, it's Tim Anderson of Living Waters Sprinkler and Landscape.
If things keep going the way they're going and people aren't controlling their irrigation system right, we're going to have a problem.
You see, Tim installs sprinklers and drip lines, and he's seen it all. Perhaps the worst, he says, is all the new construction, complete with sod that needs to keep wet, but only for a week or so.
When we go back in there to check their sprinklers, maybe 5 months later, they're still watering 4 or 5 times a day.
And if you think overwatering can't be bad for thirsty lawns, think again. Shallow roots make for weak lawns that turn brown at the first hint of drought. Tim says deep watering a couple of times a week with proper fertilizer is way better.
And then when the drought comes, those roots are way down in the ground. They're getting water still. They're not sitting on top and your grass is dying.
And speaking of drought, if we all don't learn to use less water, even if it is cheap, we could run out at the end of the year. And then your lawn will look awful, fewer crops will mean rising food costs, and maybe most importantly, your fun at Lucky Peak goes literally down the drain.
What I keep hearing about is, Greg, tell me how long the boat ramps at Lake Wool are going to be in the water. I don't manage that, but I do know what has an impact on it, and the harder we draw out of it, the sooner those are going to be closed down.
Sprinkler heads put out a gallon a minute each. Drip lines, on the other hand, do a gallon an hour. So if you have an old home with flower or shrubbery gardens, consider drip lines.
I would say 100% of your landscape contractors are using drip line in the flower beds.
And consider this, right now we really don't need to water our lawns very much. Despite the sunshine right now, we've had plenty of rain, cooler temperatures, and even houses that haven't turned on their sprinkler systems have green lawns. So if you put off watering your lawns until it gets a little bit warmer, we could save an awful lot of water. In Meridian, Roland Barras, Idaho News 6.
Up next, we'll tell you why this beekeeper wants to stand in the middle of 35,000 bees and why they're so important to the environment.
The Allergy Report, brought to you by Boise Valley Asthma and Allergy.
The pollen count is on the extreme side. In fact, it's off the scale, just rocketing up to 860. It is mostly all tree pollen. Again, the breezes are really causing an increase in the pollen, and it's likely to be with us right into the weekend and possibly even through the weekend.
Well, pollen might not be great for allergy sufferers, but it, along with the insects like bees who carry it from plant to plant, play an essential role in our ecosystem.
Without those bugs, there is no life on Earth, not just human life, but no life.
You can help by dedicating part of your home garden to plants that support that essential pollinating process.
And you can do it in your backyard. You can do it in a pot. You could do it on your windowsill or on a porch in pots. And you can start viewing it as like, I have wildlife that visits my backyard, and that's special.
The Treasure Valley Pollinator Project, now in its second year, aims to make it easy to pick plants that appeal to local bees, beetles, and butterflies, including milkweed to support Idaho's state insect, the monarch butterfly.
It used to be a lot of monarchs in Idaho, and now they're rare. It's very rare that you're going to spot a monarch in our state.
You can learn more about the Pollinator Project in this story on our website, idahonews6.com. Or you can do what many Valley residents are doing and keep bees of your own. The Treasure Valley Bee Club is a resource to learn more about the challenges facing U.S. bee populations. And as Ardon Nelson shows us, it also provides workshops and demonstrations for citizen beekeepers.
It looked interesting, and we thought this would be great. We can raise bees and get some honey, and life will be good.
So that's how the life of a beekeeper started for Mark Van Hewen and his wife.
Right now I've got 7 hives with bees in it, and probably 5,000 bees per hive, so 35,000 bees behind us, roughly.
Keep in mind, you may have neighbors who might be a little squeamish to the idea of having 35,000 bees next door.
One day, my neighbor just over there came knocking on my door, and I thought it was for the worse. And he basically had a Tupperware container full of raspberry compote. And he looked at me and said, "Mark, your bees have made such a good job with my raspberries. I wanted to give this to you."
Before you get started, get educated.
It's something that you need to really get educated and know what you're getting into before you go out and get your hive and then buy your bees and put them in and think things are going to just work out great.
If you do live in a subdivision, it's best to check with your HOA just to make sure. And because of a virus from a mite, bees have had a tough go at it for the last 10 to 15 years. And adding even one more hive will help not only your neighborhood, but others as well. Simply put, bees pollinate our plants, meaning bees are a big part of what we consume every day. Another benefit of becoming a beekeeper or taking up beekeeping as a hobby is the honey that you get from your bees. If you take a tablespoon a day, I'm told it might help with your allergies.
What you're seeing there are capped cells.
And for Mark, it's kind of therapeutic.
It's something that you need to really get educated and know what you're getting into before you go out and get your hive and then buy your bees and put them in and think things are going to just work out great.
An experience that benefits everyone. Don Nelson, Idaho News 6.
A declining bee population underscores the importance of keeping the bees we do have. So if you find some on your property, don't panic.
Well, a bee knows that it will die if it stings you, so that's the last thing it wants to do.
Instead of spraying or calling an exterminator, call a group like the Treasure Valley Bee Rescue. They'll come out for free to safely remove the colony, put it in a hive, and give it a new home.
The Idaho News 6 Tower Cam Network is sponsored by Bronco Motors Hyundai.
Last check of that forecast coming up for tomorrow. Another mild day with temperatures in the 70s. But again, that colder weather is moving in. A chance for a few showers on Saturday. And watch out for cold, maybe even frosty temperatures by the beginning of next week. Thanks for joining us, everyone.